take time to understand the end-to-end impact and implications.
Right.
We miss that. Don't skip to the solution, the technical solution. No technology is going to be the silver bullet. You need the people to be part of it, engaged, to want to do it, right? You need to thoughtfully plan it, manage it, prioritize, because you cannot do everything all at once, right?
Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Engatica's interview series. I'm your host, Kimberly, and we're really glad to have you join us today. Today, we have with us a very special guest. We have Dora Boussias with us, Stryker's Senior Director, Data Strategy and Architecture on the show. Welcome to the show, Dora. It's so glad to have you join us today.
Kimberly, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Before we dive into a crazy interview with Dora, let me tell you something about Engatica. The Engatica interview series is a powerhouse of insights from industry experts and influencers from around the world, a platform that provides the latest news on AI, automation, and technologies that will help you grow your business. Come be a part of our community where we learn, share, and grow together. So diving into our interview, Dora, let's get back to basics. I think that is one of the most important thing that we really need to do in terms of all processes and strategies that we come across in businesses. So what is data strategy? What does that really even mean? Why is it essential for businesses or startups?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Kimberly. I think this is such an important question. You know, I'm going to start with the latter part of your question, which is why is it so important? Especially in our times, it is extremely important because, you know, for me, data is, I like to say sometimes, just that lifeblood, right? No matter what we do in organizations, you know, yes, you got the people, you got the process, you got the technology, but what really informs everything we do is that data that just flows from system to system and process to process. So having a thoughtful way for how we're going to manage this, right? And, you know, when I say managing our data, that's different than processing our data. So data strategy, just the first thing to think about, it's not about, hey, how do I mine this data? How do I convert it? How do I transfer it from here to there? That's more about data processing. You know, managing the data is really more about, what does this really mean? How can I use it to my advantage to help my business, you know, do better with our customers, or come up with new revenue streams, or address any kind of, say, issues that we might have on the operational issues on the manufacturing floor, right? So data strategy is really, how do we put a thoughtful way around what do we need to do to manage this data? And the key here really is that it is very, very closely related to the business strategy. Again, it's all about how is this going to help us bring our business forward? And when I'm saying bring our business forward, typically two things come to mind for me. One, depending the type of industry vertical we're in, is how do I help my customer or my patient, if we're in healthcare, or the consumer, whoever it is, right? Because there's an ultimate beneficiary, if you will, of what the organization is doing. Because when we do that, then the organization does better too. So the second part of why we want to have a thoughtful business strategy that connects to the business too is, how do I help my business just be healthier? You know, with a healthy cash flow and balance sheet and income statement, the financials, and just competitive, so that I can really thrive in what we do. So we can't do that unless we start managing the data in terms of what are those business objectives that we want to hit. And I'm gonna pause in a second. I just want to say some of what I've seen is sometimes that people think about data strategy. Oh, okay, I'm going to implement this tool, for example, or I'm going to build this AI ML platform, right? That's a lot about the technology. It's a lot about the data itself. You hear me say sometimes data strategy is really not about the data. It is about the business and how it helps us go forward. Now, there's different ways how we go about it, and we can talk, if you like, about what are the different components of a data strategy. But I would start with that, and hopefully that resonates with folks.
Yes, definitely. I like how you put a fresh perspective here on saying that data strategy is not just about data. It is actually how you align it with your processes of the business. So that is something new that we all of us learn. Talking about pitfalls and roadblocks, what do you see coming in when we are taking into consideration data strategy?
Yeah, interesting. So actually, the first pitfall is that where people think that data strategy is about the data, and it is not. It is about the business. So that's the first pitfall. That's the first, sometimes people fall into that trap. And even when we're talking about trying to get better managing our data off the ground and get the executive support and have a thoughtful program that's funded and we do things around it, sometimes people fall into that trap about talking about the data and about how we can bring this technology platform, and they forget to say, but to what end, what are we going to do? So pretend, for example, sometimes folks say, I'm going to build a data lake. And that's my data strategy because I'm going to build a data lake. I'm going to bring all of the data and then I'm going to do all of these analytics. And I would say, pretend you have the data lake. Pretend you have all the data in the world there. What are you going to do with it? How are we going to use it? What business value is it going to bring specifically? Because when we really relate it to the business need, and it's a thoughtful and prioritized need, then we can also focus on, okay, who do we need to bring in? What processes, repeatable ways of managing this data and what we do with it do we need to bring in, right? What is it a data lake, the right solution? Maybe it's something else, because when you say I'm going to build a data lake, you're jumping to solution and technology, and you're not trying to understand very clearly, but what is the business need that I'm trying to help to move forward? So I would say that's one of the first pitfalls, just understanding it's the business. We're doing this for a reason, and the reason is not to do the latest and greatest buzzword things around anything around data architectures, data platforms, data tools. It's really about, how do I help my patients? How do I help my customer? How do I help my business be healthier, more competitive, so that we can keep putting our products or our services out there, right? So that's the first pitfall. Another pitfall, and I think that's related, is that so many times people think that data strategy is an IT thing, a technology thing. Or if you're talking more about the data science, sometimes people think, okay, we're going to do AI, ML, we're going to do data science. Sometimes I've seen people equate that with data strategy. So what I would want to say here, it is not just an IT or technology only thing. And it's a very close partnership between the business, functional folks, and the technology folks, right? And this is important to understand because this guides how we work together, even if we were to implement a data lake, for example, because we figured out, no, this is the right thing for us to do. And it's the right thing for us to do at this point in time, because it will help us with this specific need that we figured out first, right? Well, to do that, it's not just going to implement technology. Again, thoughtfully thinking about this and managing it and setting it up in a way that can help us now, but also help us, sustain for the future. You need both the functional expertise, the technical expertise. And, I'm a big advocate for just having the cross-pollination, if you will, bringing that diversity of thought and experience together in one team to work together. So many times I've seen people fall into that trap of, yeah, it's just a technology thing, and it's not. And I would say another big one, there's many, but I'll give you one more because I think this is hugely important as well. There is a lot of organizational change management. Implementing a thoughtful data strategy really means transforming the organization, because to my experience, and I've been exposed to a lot of different verticals, industries, and teams over my career, organizations are still very much silos. Every division is doing their own thing. Different teams have their own scope and they're working on it, and they forget to understand, hey, end to end, there is other impact, and we need to come together, break down those silos. To break down those silos, it is not that I'm going to get a big ERP or a big data lake or a big customer data platform or whatever the technology is, and it will magically happen. That is important. We need to do that. We need to do a good job with that. But that's not going to be successful unless we help bring the people forward. Because all these folks that will use these tools that we implement have to unlearn their existing habits for how they were working with this data, how they were day-to-day carrying their process, their operational business process that we're doing. They knew these are the steps that I go. This is what I do. I create this report and I download this file and I do this thing. Okay, that is changing right now. So not only do they have to learn the new steps, but before we figure out what are the new steps, the difference is that you have to think not only what I'm doing here, but bringing all of the folks together from the different silos to work as one team. That's a different mindset. And it's a different way for how we work with each other. So there's huge effort, really, that's not trivial, around getting that organizational change management, just transforming the organization to think as one team, not as a multiple silo teams. That's different than how do we bring these different teams marching towards common goals. And to do that successfully, you have to have common understanding of some things, including the data, including the processes, common goals. And, we need to learn to work together with each other. And that is not a one-time thing. This is something that's like a journey. You got to keep on bringing the people along with you. So organizational change management, getting people to engage in implementing this data strategy that we thoughtfully, defined and prioritized around. That's important, and we need to keep on doing it to keep that engagement. There's got to be something in it for those people to engage and be part of the solution, not against it.
Those were some really, really good insights. I was just curious on when you were talking about roadblocks and pitfalls. Does any case study or any experience that you've had of any situation that comes across your mind where you could, explain to our audience of how you actually, identified a problem that was caused, and how did you actually, take a look at it and maybe then solve it?
Yeah, I can give you examples throughout my career, and I've been doing this for about 27 and a half years. I'm rounding it up to close to 30 years right now. And like I said, I've been in retail and insurance and financial services and healthcare. So I've seen this happen in different times and with different teams. So here is an example that perhaps the audience can resonate with. There's been examples, for example, where, big program, we go live, right? And then after we go live, it happens. We build, we architect, we design it, we build, we develop it, we go live, right? And then things break. And I've seen many times where things break is when, hey, downstream is getting the data from the upstream from this program, but they cannot really carry through with their process because the data that they're getting is not what they were expecting. And it might even be called the same thing. So I'll give you a very, very basic example that I think everybody can resonate with. It could be data around customers and sales, for example. And you have this process here and you have all of this data here, but you need to send some of that data about your customer and their sales to some other business process that uses a different system downstream. So obviously we need to have a data flow here, right? Send them the data. And it could be something as simple as the addresses of my customers, right? So upstream can be sending an address downstream. That address includes, let's say, state. I live in the United States. Let's say state code, right? Well, I've seen big issues, and I'm giving a simple one that I think people can relate to, where, okay, we're processing the data, right? This is why managing is different than the processing. We're sending the data over. Guess what? We still cannot do what we need to do here, because even though we got the customer data with the addresses, the state codes that was sent from upstream are different than the state codes from downstream. Why? Because these two folks, or these two teams, let's say, did not talk to each other to say, hey, I'm going to need what you're sending me, but let's make sure we speak the same language. So there may be sending something where the state code is and it could be a state code, be a currency code, whatever, right? Let's say a 2-character here, and I have my own 2 characters. So when I bring the data downstream and I'm trying to bring it into my system to deal with it, I don't understand it because you're telling me, you know, CT for the state of Connecticut, let's say, that's what the upstream is sending, but the downstream might have it as, I don't know, CONN for Connecticut, like having their own drop-down list, right? So technically, yes, I know you need state. Yes, I'm sending it. Yes, technically this interface connected on the data, but why did it break? It broke because these 2 teams hadn't really understood that's one example, the implications of speaking the same language, because that's one little piece about, you know, as part of data strategies, there's many more there, but that's like one little example. And there's a lot bigger examples for that, because sometimes we miss sending even any data at all. Or here's another example, we might be wanting to do some analytics downstream, but for analytics, to develop those KPIs needs XYZ data. But guess what? That XYZ data, whatever that data is not getting captured, or all of it, until like 3-4 steps upstream in the data flow. Right? So if this, say again, I have some kind of a, maybe it's the CRM, right? Maybe we're capturing data in here. And the CRM might be capturing data about our customers, the minimum stuff that we need about the order, right? Now, as we capture the data here, we need to manage it. We need to getting it through, you know, the transactional processes. So 3-4 steps down the end-to-end process, I want to do analytics. But for me to be able to answer this particular question, some KPI, I need this other piece of information, and we don't have it. Why don't we have it? Because we never captured it up front, or we didn't capture it at the right level. Why? Because when we designed and implemented these things here upstream, we never took the time outside of the scope of whatever that project, or, you know, was creating, to say, hey, if I think about the end-to-end business process, who else might need this data? What are they going to do with it? What else might they need? Do they need it? Or maybe they need some other piece of data input, you know, maybe a flag, maybe an ID, maybe something else, maybe a diversity indicator about my customer, my supplier, maybe something else. And, you know, I'm just going to give you this other one example, because I think that might help the folks understand even better. I say this sometimes. If I am to build a home, I need to know if I'm building a ranch or if I'm building a 2-story home, because that's going to change the kind of foundation that I'm building. But if I'm saying, oh yeah, okay, next year I might put a 2nd or 3rd floor, just let's start building it. We'll build a foundation as a ranch, as a 1-story. Great. Now, great. You're like, that's what you want to do. You move in, you build it, and then you say, you know what? My kids are going to move in with me. I need a 2nd floor, a 3rd floor. That might be a little bit too late. Your foundation actually may crack, right? So that's what I'm saying. Let's understand from the beginning end to end what that picture is, what those impacts are a little bit.
Yes, thank you so much. I really like how you've, you know, given us examples where everyone could really relate to, in terms of, you know, pulling in data that, you know, the sales, like the CRM is pulling in, and then, you know, if you have to use it for marketing, and what is the real, you know, things that you don't really, you know, come across when you're creating these systems. But after you go live, you kind of then know, okay, this was something that we really needed to take care of. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to connect it back to how we started, right? This is why data strategy is a thoughtful plan with priorities to around how do I manage my data. This is what I mean when I'm saying it's not data processing. It's not writing a pipeline and getting this data and maybe wrangling or whatever we want to do, right? Because that's good and we need to do it. But if we're only doing within the confines of what we're trying to solve right here, right now, it's really more about processing the data, right? But if I really want to manage it, if I really want to leverage the potential value in the data, then I need to understand the business context. And if I had one little soundbite to give to the audience, right, I would say kind of like what I alluded to, take time to understand the end-to-end impact and implications. Right. We miss that. Don't skip to the solution, the technical solution. No technology is going to be the silver bullet. You need the people to be part of it, engaged to want to do it, right? You need to thoughtfully plan it, manage it, prioritize, because you cannot do everything all at once, right? You need to understand there's different pieces to it. Data strategy is not just about analytics. It's also about things like data management laws, loosely putting it, like MDM and governance and quality and architecture. It's also about things like security and privacy and information governance. And it is about the analytics, it is about the tools and the platforms, and it is that organizational change management that sometimes I think of that as a data literacy work stream, right? But again, literacy from the perspective of how do I get people to realize what's in it for them so that they're part of us going forward. So it's a thoughtful plan to get the potential value out of the data. It's not processing it, it's managing it. And we need to understand it in business context end to end. Those are my 2 quick little sound bites for the audience.
Thank you so much. It was really, really lovely talking to you. I really like all the concepts that you put in place and how exactly you actually need to think about end to end and not just one process. So thank you so much, Dora, for sharing your valuable insights with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Kimberly.
Awesome. For more content, subscribe to Engati and tap the bell icon so you get access to exclusive content coming from thought leaders from around the globe. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you around with a new expert soon. Thank you.